I still remember the first time I heard about the Grayson house. I must have been around 9, sitting on the floor of old Mrs. Holbrook's general store, wide-eyed as she spun another one of her ghost tales. Hollow Creek was full of them, stories of spirits and curses passed down like family recipes. But the Grayson house? That one was different. That one made the grown-ups shift uncomfortably in their chairs. That one made the bravest kids go quiet. They said the house was cursed, that no one who entered after dark ever came out the same. Some claimed the entire Grayson family had gone mad. Others whispered about rituals, shadows, and screams that echoed through the trees. I'd passed the place a few times growing up, always from a distance. It sat like a wounded animal at the edge of the forest, huge, crumbling, and completely alone. Its windows were always dark. The paint had long since peeled from the wood, and ivy strangled what was left of the walls. No birds ever flew near it. Even the wind seemed to avoid the place. I never thought I'd step foot inside. But that was before the dare. It started as all dumb decisions do, with too much confidence and not enough sense. We were 4 friends, fresh into our second year of college, home for the fall break. Me, Emma, Jake, the goofball with more charm than brains, Lila, the sharp-tongued realist, and Marcus, the quiet observer who somehow always knew more than he let on. We'd grown up together in Hollow Creek, and like most small-town kids, we believed we'd outgrown the place. That evening, we sat at Jake's house, sprawled across couches and beanbags, bored out of our minds. The conversation drifted, as it often did, to legends and dares. And then, out of nowhere, Jake said it. "Let's check out the Grayson house." Lila rolled her eyes so hard I thought she might pass out. "You've had too many sodas," she muttered, but there was an edge in her voice. She was nervous, even if she wouldn't admit it. Marcus said nothing, but I saw the way he glanced toward the window, toward the distant hills where the house sat like a ghost waiting to be acknowledged. "Come on," Jake grinned. "We're not kids anymore. What's the worst that could happen?" I should have said no. We all should have. But something about the challenge, about finally facing the one place we'd only ever talked about, felt like a rite of passage. Like if we could conquer this, we could conquer anything. So we agreed. We packed flashlights, snacks, a portable charger, and a cheap camcorder Jake insisted on bringing to document the hauntings. The sun was dipping low as we walked out of town, the sky painted in streaks of orange and deepening purple. The air smelled like burning leaves and the coming cold. None of us spoke much as the house came into view. The closer we got, the more the weight settled into our chests. I couldn't explain it then, but something about the way the mansion stood, half swallowed by trees, the roof sagging, windows like hollow eyes, made me feel like we were being watched, like the house knew we were coming. As we reached the rusted gate, Lila hesitated. "We can still turn back," she said softly. No one responded. The gate creaked open with a moan that sounded too much like a sigh. The front path was overgrown, lined with dead flowers and tangled vines. Every step felt heavier than the last. When we finally reached the door, Jake looked back at us, eyes wide with excitement and maybe a hint of fear. "Last chance," he grinned. No one moved. He pushed the door open. It groaned in protest, swinging slowly into darkness. And just like that, we stepped inside the Grayson house. We thought it was just a dare. We had no idea what we had awakened. The door groaned on its hinges as we stepped inside, and for a second, all 4 of us just stood there, silent, taking it in. The light from our flashlights cut through thick layers of dust that floated lazily in the still air, disturbed for the first time in what felt like years. The scent of mold, rot, and something older, something bitter and metallic filled our noses. I tried not to breathe too deeply. The grand hall of the Grayson house was exactly how I imagined it would be, and worse. The floor beneath us creaked with every step, brittle with time and warped by decay. An enormous staircase dominated the far wall, its once polished banister now dull and splintered. Torn curtains hung limply beside tall, narrow windows that let in barely any of the dying light outside. Cobwebs stretched like veins across the ceiling, and dust coated every surface like snow. But what struck me most were the portraits. Dozens of them lined the walls, men and women in stiff, formal attire, painted in that lifelike style that always seems too real. Their eyes followed us. I don't mean metaphorically. They followed us. Every time I turned, every time I moved, I could feel their gaze shift. Marcus noticed it too. I caught him glancing at one in particular, a tall man with a gray beard and a stare like a knife, and shivering, though the room was warm compared to what was coming. Jake broke the tension with a loud clap of his hands. "All right, team," he said, grinning. "We split up Scooby-Doo style, or what?" Lila rolled her eyes. "Because that always ends well in horror movies." I wanted to suggest we stay together, but part of me was curious. That kind of curiosity that nibbles at the back of your mind, daring you to step just a little closer to the edge. Eventually, we agreed to fan out through the first floor, no more than a few rooms away from each other, and meet back in 10 minutes. Jake headed toward the dining room. Lila took the east corridor, and Marcus lingered by the staircase before disappearing into what looked like a parlor. I stood in the center of the grand hall, unsure of where to go, until my eyes caught a door just left of the main staircase. It was half open, as if waiting for me. The library. It was huge, towering shelves stuffed with ancient, crumbling books that filled the room with a dry, musty scent. An elaborate chandelier, dulled with cobwebs, hung overhead, and 2 faded armchairs sat by the fireplace, which hadn't been lit in decades. But what really drew me in was the desk. It was tucked against the back wall beneath a broken window. There, resting beneath a cracked glass dome, was a leather-bound book. I approached slowly. The book was coated in dust, but a single word was etched on its cover in delicate gold script: Eliza. I opened it. The pages were fragile, yellowed with age and covered in tight, slanted handwriting. A diary. The first entry was dated October 3rd, 1891. Eliza Grayson, the youngest daughter of the family. The words started off innocently, even playfully. Descriptions of garden walks, tea parties, frustrations with her older brother. But as I flipped through, the tone began to shift. The handwriting grew messier. Paranoia seeped into the lines. She wrote of watching eyes, unheard footsteps, dreams she couldn't wake from, and whispers that bled through the walls. My skin prickled as I read. Each entry spiraled deeper into confusion, dread, madness. And then, it stopped. The final words were scrawled in jagged, uneven ink that trailed off mid-sentence. "It's here. I can't escape." I froze. A sudden chill swept through the room, sharp and biting, as if someone had opened a freezer door right behind me. I turned quickly, expecting one of the others to be playing a prank. But no one was there. Then, the silence deepened. It wasn't the kind of silence you hear in nature or empty houses. It was total. The sound of my own breathing felt muted. The air was so still I could hear my heartbeat, thudding in my ears. I tightened my grip on the flashlight, but just as I moved to call for the others, the light flickered. And then it went out. Pitch black. I tried the switch, smacked the side, but nothing. From across the mansion I heard 3 things all at once: a door slamming shut, a gasp, and what sounded like whispering. Dozens of voices, faint and layered, whispering all at once from every corner of the house. I backed toward the door, the diary clutched in my hands. My chest tightened as the voices grew louder, more frantic, as if they were rushing toward me. The darkness felt alive, pressing in from all sides. Then I heard Lila scream, sharp, piercing, and it was cut off like a breath. The house was awake, and we had just stepped into its mouth. The moment Lila's scream vanished into silence, the mansion seemed to breathe, slow, heavy, like it had just fed. I stood frozen in the library, the diary still open in my trembling hands, every instinct inside me screaming to run, but my legs rooted in place by something colder than fear. Realization. This wasn't just a haunted house. It was alive. The pages in Eliza's diary fluttered in the sudden draft, stopping on an entry I hadn't read yet. My flashlight flickered weakly as I brought the book closer, the words trembling beneath the shaking light. Father has changed. He stands in the hallway at night, whispering to something I cannot see. Mother no longer eats. William scratched symbols into the floor with a knife. They say it is all in my head, but I hear it too. The voice from the walls. It knows my name now. It tells me things. Horrible things. I swallowed hard, turning the page. The door at the end of the west corridor is locked. Father says it must never be opened, but I've seen him slip inside at night, dragging something behind him. There's a smell, sweet, rotting, like flowers left too long in water. I followed once. I heard a voice. Low, deep. Not his. I don't think it was ever his. The margins were filled with chaotic scribbles, circles, and jagged runes I didn't recognize. The more I read, the more disjointed her thoughts became. Dates stopped appearing. The entries blurred into a stream of fear, obsession, and desperation. The house listens. It shifts when it doesn't want you to leave. Yesterday, the staircase led to a wall. Today, the kitchen is gone. I haven't seen the sun in 3 days. Time doesn't move right anymore. My mouth had gone dry. Somewhere in the house, something creaked, slow, deliberate, like someone dragging their fingers across wood. I turned the page one last time, hands sweating, breath held tight. It's here. I can't escape. The line was scrawled hastily as though she'd been interrupted. The ink bled across the paper. No period, no closure. Just an ending that wasn't an ending at all. My flashlight died. Darkness swallowed the room instantly. A suffocating, absolute dark. I couldn't even see my hand inches from my face. Panic surged through me. I fumbled for the light, hitting the button over and over with no response. A cold breeze brushed my cheek, and my breath hitched. That's when I heard it. The whispers. Soft at first. A murmur. Then more. Layered voices, old and young, male and female, all whispering at once. Too fast to understand. Too many to count. It was like standing in the center of a hive. I pressed myself against the bookshelf, clutching Eliza's diary to my chest like it could protect me. I wanted to scream for Jake or Marcus, but my throat tightened like something gripped it from the inside. The whispering grew louder, urgent, angry, as if my presence was an offense, an intrusion they had tolerated long enough. Then I heard footsteps, not from the hallway, inside the library. I froze. Each step came slow, heavy, deliberate, closer and closer. My breath caught in my throat. Something was there with me. I knew if I moved, it would hear. If I ran, it would chase. But if I stayed, I wasn't sure I'd survive either. Suddenly, a beam of light cut through the dark, Jake's flashlight sweeping across the doorway. I nearly collapsed in relief. "Emma!" he called, his voice low and cautious. I didn't even answer. I just ran toward it. We collided in the hall, and I grabbed his arm so hard he winced. "Where's Lila?" I gasped. He shook his head wide-eyed. She screamed and then... nothing. I looked everywhere. The hallway changed. I was just at the stairs and they were gone. And the lights. Mine went out too. Then it came back by itself. We found Marcus seconds later, pale and shaking, in what should have been the dining room but now looked like a narrow corridor with no doors. "We need to get out," he said immediately. "Now." I showed them the diary, the entries, the symbols. Jake didn't laugh this time. No jokes, no sarcasm. He just nodded, lips pressed tight. We started moving, staying close, retracing our steps through the impossible architecture. But the house, it had other plans. Rooms repeated, hallways looped. At one point, we swore we passed the same painting 3 times, even though we took different turns. It felt like being inside a nightmare. No logic, no exit, only darkness and the growing certainty that something was hunting us. And always, the whispers. They never stopped. They only waited. Lila's scream didn't echo like it should have. It hit the air sharp and sudden, then it was gone, swallowed by the mansion as if it had never existed at all. For a moment, we stood frozen in place, too stunned to speak, the silence pressing in so tightly that even our breathing seemed too loud. Then we snapped into motion, voices overlapping, calling her name, stumbling through the darkness in a frantic rush to find her. We followed the sound, or where we thought it had come from, down a side corridor that hadn't been there before. I swear to you, when we entered the house, that hallway didn't exist. But now it stretched out before us, narrow and long, the wallpaper curling like old skin, the light from our flashlights dimming the deeper we went. The walls seemed to close in with every step, and the floor dipped unevenly beneath our feet. "Lila!" I called, my voice cracking. Nothing. Just the low creak of wood and the sound of Marcus's footsteps behind me. Jake reached a corner ahead of us and turned, then froze. "Emma, you need to see this." I rushed forward, heart pounding, and rounded the corner, then stopped cold. There was no hallway anymore. Just a wall. Not a door. Not a collapsed section of the house. A smooth, untouched wall with faded floral wallpaper like it had always been there, as if the passage had never existed. Jake ran his hands over the surface, pressing, pounding. "This was open. It was open, Emma. I saw her flashlight. She was right here." Marcus shook his head slowly, whispering something under his breath that I didn't catch. His face had gone pale, and his eyes flicked back down the corridor we'd just come from. "It's changing," he said. "The house. It's not the same anymore." We retraced our steps, but nothing was familiar. The grand hall had vanished. The staircase was gone. Instead, we found ourselves in what looked like a parlor. Only all the furniture had been draped in sheets, thick with dust and cobwebs. The windows were bricked up from the inside. Our flashlights flickered more frequently now, and every time they did, the shadows in the corners seemed to move. Not in some subtle, maybe I imagined it way. They shifted. They twitched. They watched. Lila was gone. Just like that. One moment, she was part of our group. The next, she had been taken. By what? We didn't know. But I could feel it now, more than ever. We were not alone in that house. Something had seen us come in, had waited, and was now hunting us one by one. Jake tried to keep us moving, tried to stay positive. "Maybe she found a way out," he said. "Maybe she's waiting outside and we're just turned around." He didn't believe that. None of us did. We turned a corner, only to find the same hallway we had just left. Marcus dropped his flashlight when he saw it, hands trembling. "We're looping," he whispered. "This place, it's folding in on itself." I wanted to deny it, to tell him he was just scared, that we were just lost, but the truth was worse. The house was shifting. Each time we took a turn, doors appeared where they hadn't been before, and familiar landmarks vanished. It was as though the mansion had become a labyrinth, and we were the mice inside. We stopped to rest in a room filled with broken chairs and a fireplace clogged with soot. Jake sat in silence, gripping the camcorder he'd insisted on bringing. "I recorded when we first came in," he murmured. "Just to be funny. I think I got Lila's scream. Maybe if we watch it, we'll see what happened." He rewound the footage and held the screen between us. The static-filled video showed us entering the house, laughing nervously. Then it cut to Lila walking just ahead of the group, the camera bouncing slightly with each step. And then, her scream, loud and clear. But what chilled me to the bone was what came after. For a single frame, just one, something appeared behind her. Something tall, misshapen, featureless. A blur of blackness where a figure should be, as if the camera couldn't quite register it. And then it vanished. Jake paused the video, face pale. "Did you see that?" "I saw it," I whispered. Marcus stood and pointed to the door. "We need to move. Now, it knows we're watching." As we stepped back into the corridor, the air had changed again. Heavier. The whispers had returned, but this time they weren't soft. They were angry. Urgent. I couldn't make out words, but I could feel their meaning. "We don't belong here. were not meant to leave. Lila was only the beginning. And I think, in that moment, we all understood the same thing. This house wasn't haunted in the way we had imagined. It wasn't just the site of tragedy. It was a predator, a living, breathing entity that had learned to mimic the shape of a home. And now it was awake. It's strange how quickly you adjust to fear. In that house, it became a constant, like breathing. Every step we took was tight with dread. Every shadow seemed to hold a secret. Every corner another threat. After Lila vanished, the three of us, me, Jake, and Marcus, moved together like a single body, too afraid to separate again. But deep down, I think we all knew that staying together wouldn't stop what was coming. It would just let us watch. We wandered the halls for what felt like hours. The clocks in the mansion had all stopped, frozen on different times, none of them matching. Time didn't seem to work right there. You'd pass through a hallway and emerge in a room you'd already seen, or a version of it. Furniture changed. Wallpaper rotted before our eyes. Doors appeared where there were none seconds earlier. I stopped trying to understand. I just kept walking. Jake kept the camcorder on, though the screen flickered with static more often now. He didn't talk much anymore, not like he used to. Gone was the bravado, the jokes. He moved quietly, eyes sharp, mouth pressed in a thin line. But I knew him too well. I could see the fear behind it, eating away at him. And something else, guilt. He was the one who dared us into this. He'd led the charge, and now Lila was gone. And part of him knew he might be next. I need to check that hallway again, Jake said suddenly, stopping at a narrow corridor we hadn't taken before. It loops. I think I saw something move earlier. Marcus shook his head. We stay together. You saw what happened when... I won't go far, Jake cut in, already stepping forward, camcorder raised. 2 minutes, tops. Jake, don't... I started, but he was already gone. We waited. 1 minute passed, then 2. The corridor remained still, dark and narrow, stretching farther than it should have. I could feel it again, the shifting, the way the house warped behind our backs when we weren't looking. Marcus gripped my arm and we called his name together. No answer. We stepped forward. The corridor felt longer now, colder. And then we saw it, Jake's flashlight, lying in the middle of the hallway, still on, casting a weak beam across the peeling wallpaper. But no Jake. The camcorder lay a few feet away, its screen cracked, the footage frozen on a single blurry frame. I picked it up, hands trembling, and replayed the last few seconds. Jake was walking, his breath loud in the mic. He turned the corner and whispered, "There it is again." His voice tight with anxiety. Then the camera shook violently. He screamed, short, sharp, terrified. And the feed cut to black. Marcus and I stood over his flashlight, paralyzed. I reached down slowly, but as my fingers touched the handle, the beam cut out completely. Darkness again. Not the absence of light kind. This darkness felt thick, heavy, like it had weight, like it watched. The air around us dropped in temperature so quickly I could see my breath. Then the whispers returned. No longer murmurs. They were full voices now, sharp, fast, clawing their way into my ears. Names, repeated over and over. Mine, Marcus's, Jake's, Lila's, spoken like a chant, like a warning, like a curse. I pressed my hands over my ears, but it didn't help. They weren't just outside, they were inside me. And then I saw it, on the wall behind Jake's flashlight where the beam had fallen moments before. Symbols. Dozens of them, scratched deep into the surface. Some in spirals, others in jagged rows. They pulsed faintly in the dark, glowing with some internal, sickly light. I stepped closer, unable to look away. That's when Marcus yanked me back. "Don't look at them too long," he said, his voice shaking. "It's like they pull you." We backed away, our steps unsteady, the hallway shifting again behind us. The door we'd come through was gone. A mirror stood in its place now, cracked and fogged. And in that reflection, I didn't see 2 of us. I saw 4. 2 of us. 2 others. Shadows in our shape, watching, unmoving. The whispering grew louder. "Run," Marcus said. We did. We ran without thinking, through doorways that led to staircases we hadn't seen before, past rooms we had never entered. We didn't stop until we collapsed in what looked like a dusty nursery, the broken crib still rocking from our entrance. Jake was gone, truly gone. I curled up against the wall, the diary clutched against my chest like it could somehow tether me to sanity. I tried to remember Jake's laugh, his dumb jokes, the way he always held the door open even when we made fun of him for being too polite. It hurt in a way I didn't expect. I hadn't had time to grieve Lila. Now Jake was just nothing. No blood. No goodbye. Just silence, and symbols, and the lingering taste of something cold and wrong in the air. Marcus sat on the floor beside me, staring at the ground, silent. For a long time, neither of us spoke. We just listened to the whispers returning, deeper now, angrier, and understood one thing with absolute certainty. The house wasn't done with us. Not yet. We didn't speak after Jake vanished. What was there left to say? His flashlight, the final image on the camcorder, the way his scream had cut out mid-breath, it all played over and over in my mind like a loop I couldn't escape. Marcus and I moved through the house like shadows, silent, stiff, and utterly broken. Each step we took was met with creaking floorboards and shifting walls, like the house was breathing, reshaping itself just to keep us lost. The whispers never truly stopped. Sometimes they were soft, like voices from another room. Other times they echoed all around us, rising in a storm of cruel, mocking tones. But the worst part? They had started saying our names. Emma, Marcus, over and over again. Sometimes they said them in our own voices, sometimes in Lila's. And once, I swear I heard Jake's. The air grew colder with every hallway we took, until we reached a stairwell we hadn't seen before. Wooden, narrow, descending into pure darkness. A gust of cold air rose up from below, thick with mildew and something else. Something metallic and bitter, like old blood. We both knew where it led. The basement. I turned to Marcus. He nodded once, solemn and silent. Then we descended. Each step groaned beneath our feet, and the darkness wrapped tighter around us the farther we went. Our flashlights flickered and buzzed like they were being drained, as if the air itself resisted the light. The moment we stepped onto the basement floor, it was like crossing into another world. The air was heavy, thick enough to choke on. The walls were lined with shelves of rotting books, jars of things I didn't dare look closely at, and strange trinkets. Bones, dolls, cracked mirrors, and rusted tools. But it was the far wall that stole all the light from the room. It was massive, completely covered in symbols etched deep into the stone. They glowed faintly, pulsing like veins, and each mark felt like it watched us. The energy they gave off wasn't just dark, it was hungry. I felt it the moment I looked at them, like they wanted something, like they were waiting. And then it moved. From the center of the wall, a shadow peeled itself free. No footsteps, no sound, just a pull, like gravity bending. The figure was tall and shifting, as if smoke had been packed into the shape of a man. No face, no eyes, just endless black. I couldn't move, I couldn't breathe, but Marcus did. He stepped in front of me. "Run," he said. "No," I whispered, shaking my head, heart slamming in my chest. "We go together." I said run, he repeated, louder, firmer. Then he shoved me backward with more strength than I thought he had. I stumbled, hit the ground hard, and watched in horror as Marcus turned to face the thing alone. He raised his flashlight, but the beam was instantly consumed by the darkness. He screamed, not in fear but in rage, and lunged toward the shadow. And then it took him. It was like watching ink spread across a page. One moment, Marcus was there, fighting. The next, he was gone. No noise, no blood. Just gone. I crawled backward, sobbing, my flashlight barely holding its glow. The symbols on the wall pulsed faster now, their rhythm syncing with my heartbeat, as if the house knew I was the last one left. I clutched Eliza's diary against my chest, desperate for some thread of guidance, some clue I had missed. Then I remembered it. One of the last entries. A mention of a passage, hidden behind the old stone in the basement, marked by the symbol of the eye. I scanned the wall, the flickering light dancing over dozens of grotesque marks until I saw it. A small, single eye, carved at the base of the far wall, surrounded by cracks. I crawled toward it, fingers shaking, and pressed against the stone. It shifted. A click echoed through the basement. Then the stone loosened, revealing a narrow black opening just big enough to crawl through. Behind me, I heard a whisper, not distant, not from the walls, right behind my ear. Emma. I didn't look back. I crawled into the tunnel. The air inside was damp, the walls slick with something cold and sticky. I moved on my hands and knees, scraping against the jagged rocks, the diary tucked under my shirt. Every inch forward felt like a mile, and I could hear things moving behind me. Footsteps that didn't match my own. Breathing that wasn't mine. The tunnel twisted, dropped, then rose again, each turn tighter than the last. And just as I thought I couldn't keep going, just as the whispers surged to a crescendo behind me, I saw it. Light. Faint, but real. A distant, soft glow from the end of the tunnel. With everything I had left, I pushed toward it. And for the first time that night, I emerged into open air. The forest greeted me like an old friend. Trees, wind, the smell of leaves and earth. It was almost too much to take in. I collapsed onto the cold ground, gasping, the stars above swimming in my tear-blurred vision. Behind me, the mansion loomed, its windows dark no longer. A dim, unnatural light pulsed within them, like a heartbeat. The Grayson house had let me go, but not because it was merciful, because it wanted me to live with it, to carry its story, to remember, and to warn. If anyone ever tells you they want to explore the Grayson house, don't let them, because the house isn't abandoned. It's waiting. I don't remember screaming. I don't remember crying. I just remember running. The moment Marcus vanished into that shifting shadow, I turned and ran, like something primal had taken over. My feet barely felt the ground beneath them, my hands clutching Eliza's diary, as if it were my only tether to reality. The house groaned with fury, the whispers rising to a chorus that roared in my ears. My name, over and over, twisted and stretched, like the house was trying to wear my identity. Emma. Ma. I crashed through a doorway, barely registering what room I had entered. It was dark and empty, lined with rusted chains and scraps of furniture that looked scorched. The floor sloped downward, and for a split second, I thought I'd reached another trap. But then I felt it. The draft. Cold and constant, coming from somewhere low. I dropped to my knees and scanned the room. That's when I saw it. A loose stone near the far wall, barely lit by the stuttering beam of my half-dead flashlight. On it, etched faintly but unmistakably, was the symbol I'd read about in Eliza's diary. The single eye. She had mentioned it in one of her later entries, right before the words stopped making sense altogether. The eye watches the way out. Beneath it, the breath of the earth. The hollow below leads to freedom, or madness. I clawed at the stone with shaking fingers, nails breaking as I tugged and pulled until finally, with a loud grind, it came loose. Behind it, a hole gaped open, just wide enough for a person to crawl through. The air that spilled out was damp and putrid, thick with mildew and something else, something that smelled alive and wrong. I didn't hesitate. I dropped the flashlight into the tunnel, slung the diary beneath my shirt, and followed, dragging myself into the narrow space on hands and knees. My palms scraped along jagged rock, my shoulders squeezed through impossibly tight turns, and every inch forward felt like the tunnel was closing in, wrapping around me. Then I heard them. Footsteps. Behind me. In the tunnel. Slow. Deliberate. Too heavy to be my own echo. I stopped breathing. Every instinct screamed not to turn around, not to look. I started crawling faster, pushing through tears, grime, and blood from where stone had split open my hands. The whispers returned, echoing through the tunnel like wind howling through a canyon. But this time they didn't say my name. They said Marcus's, and Jake's, and Lila's. I knew it was a trick, I knew it. But hearing their voices, Jake's joking tone, Lila's irritated sigh, Marcus's calm quiet, felt like knives in my chest. The house wanted me to stop. It wanted me to turn around. I kept crawling. The air grew colder. The ground turned to mud beneath my knees. My arms ached, my mind spun. And still, footsteps, always just behind me. Then, finally, the tunnel began to widen. A faint, silvery glow filtered through cracks ahead. My fingers reached for it like salvation. With one final push, I burst out of the mouth of the tunnel, landing hard on cold, wet grass. The forest. Real air filled my lungs. I could smell pine, damp earth, the distant scent of a fire somewhere in the hills. I rolled onto my back, sobbing in relief, staring up at the sky dotted with stars. My hands shook as I pulled the diary from my shirt, its pages damp with sweat and tunnel rot, but still intact. Behind me, the tunnel yawned, silent and black. I didn't wait to see if anything followed. I stood on trembling legs and turned to face the mansion one last time. The Grayson house rose in the distance, still and menacing, its crooked roof silhouetted against the treetops. But now, its windows glowed, not warmly, not like candlelight, but with a sickly, pulsating hue, as if something inside had awoken fully, stretching in its new silence. A chill ran through me that had nothing to do with the wind. I turned and walked, stumbled, into the woods. I didn't look back again. When I finally made it to the edge of town, I collapsed on the roadside, barely conscious, covered in dirt and blood and darkness. An old farmer found me at dawn. I didn't tell him anything. I didn't tell anyone, not the police, not my parents. I just said I got lost in the woods. They searched for my friends. Of course they did. They never found a single trace. And I never spoke of what happened. But I kept the diary. Not to remember. To remind myself not to forget. Because I know one day, someone else will feel curious. Someone else will hear the stories and think it's just a dare. And the house will open its doors again. Waiting. It always waits.